Hello everyone, it's Mike Levitt, SEO, New York City. Thursday, August 3rd at about 2 p.m. An unusual time for me to be shooting a video, but I basically skipped over lunch today, and it was a problem. It was a combination of trying to solve a problem that I was really engrossed in and had a deadline for, and also having to sit in on a product demo, something which I think we already got, but we had to go through some training to really understand how the products can be used, and it's quite impressive. And it really gets across to me the fact that all these things that should be becoming possible now, with all these advanced libraries to help look for relationships amongst your various sources of data in order to find actionable insights, things that software should be able to tell you according to a recommendation engine that you should be doing in order to perform better based on its observations of all the other data, sometimes besides your own, that these tools have access to, aggregating search results across hundreds of thousands of keywords and industries such as they do. The big keyword position tracker companies, the companies who sell fairly high-end products based on their ability to know where your and your competitors' content is performing on what keywords, in what time ranges, so that you can see, start to do predictive stuff by looking at trending. So it's not just a snapshot of the search landscape today, it's, a data cube. And in fact, one of the vendors named that portion of their product Data Cube. There's data warehousing involved and lots of information being vomited into these systems all the time, from data collectors running all around the world, either being funneled through anonymous proxies to look like just generic web servers, or better still, on servers that are just being spontaneously deployed in different locations in different people's houses, I would presume, just as a way of keeping things mixed up, avoiding creating the kind of footprint profiling IDs that are very possible with computers these days, and favoring instead what we would think of as anonymous mode under Google Chrome, incognito mode. But not always, because even that creates a signature of SERP monitoring. So sometimes you want to allow sessions to exist, but if you move the physical location of that server or bounce the same request through a different anonymous proxy, you certainly don't want that same footprint showing up elsewhere in the world. So there are just tons of considerations to doing your own SERP monitoring. By the way, I guess I'm here on Park Avenue. That's the MetLife building behind me there. This is a very typical walk I might do. Like yesterday when I came here, I took the Metro North, so I was coming down from Grand Central, which is just right up around the MetLife building. But one of the benefits of working here in New York City is actually being able to take these walks and immerse myself in and amongst just activity, human activity, watching behavior, watching the use of cars versus public transportation, the way commerce is conducted around you, big on the street type storefront business, back up in behind doormen and elevator businesses. I started to talk about that the other day, and I mentioned a couple of businesses from my childhood that I sought out here just to get a feel for that. This is really taking tangents, isn't it? Well, this is the kind of free association I need to do to get to my next steps often in what I'm working on, because it's a lot like your dream time and processing. Humans and computers have a lot in common, or should I say the systems we build up around computers. So every once in a while, if you're a good DBA, you rebuild your indexes. First, those indexes had to have been chosen intelligently, so all the various lookups and queries you're likely to do have had their their lookup tables, the index that follows probably some sort of, I forget what they're called, Merkle trees, so that things are split in half and split in half again. So no search for anything, no matter how large your database, actually needs to take that long if you have generated your hash keys appropriately, which is one of the big changes, I think, from Python 3.5 to 3.6, switching from one algorithm that is used for sorry, it's weird seeing just these runners run out of this place here. Key lookup against a dictionary. You put a key in, you get a value out. Python 3.5 and prior used one way that was very common before, assumed access to greater resources in general, and storage space and lookup speed and processor speed, such that they switched to another method so that just the performance of dictionaries in Python, key value pair, objects in memory, had like a 10 or 100 times performance increase just by switching how the indexes were built on them. So indexes are very important, and they're built all the time on databases, and they're built in our heads. Indexes are just associations between some big globular amorphous, binary opaque objects, all the sensory input from an experience you had, and some extremely simplified, reduced in complexity symbol that you can actually lay out on a table in front of you and manage a bunch of them at once without going crazy with the volume of symbols you need to keep track of. Hence, we get things like an alphabet, all the Chinese pictograms in their much larger alphabet, and phenome sounds that build up words, and words are themselves an audio symbol. And so the world gets simplified, all this vast complex stuff coming in through sensory input that would be impossible to search and sort and make use of in any meaningful way if you were just recording it all like a VCR. It gets plugged into this hierarchical tree of referenceable experiences, memory. Some is right here in your conscious mind, what you're thinking about right now. Lots of other stuff is shuffled off into long-term memory, and some of that stuff in long-term memory is orphaned. It's irretrievable. It is not cross-linked with enough other similar ideas. You have not processed your thoughts sufficiently. Hence we dream, and our dreams build the human equivalent of a database index, and it's essential. And if you don't get enough, you start to not perform as well as you're used to. Soldiers can go on this soldier schedule of just getting 6 or 5 hours a night, but you know what? Soldiers don't have to have, well, I gotta be careful there. I wanted to say things like optimized creative ability, but I may be wrong, in this era of the one-person high-tech soldier. They might need every bit as much creativity as people who are, coding for a living, which I'm stunned that I'm actually in the blessed position of doing now. I've always assumed that programming was something that I did on the side as a way to do my job better with my bosses, my higher-ups in the corporate structure, never really understanding or caring that this is how I got my work done. This is how I knew how to do stuff well, because I was able to employ techniques that most other people don't have readily at their disposal. Hence my whole getting sort of locked into this talk about tools and spontaneous expertise and mastery using your tools, and how people in tech are so often denied that opportunity because things change so fast in tech, JavaScript. And with Python, you get this accumulating, knowledge and experience on a platform that is itself accumulating knowledge and experience in the form of all these very specialized, exactly for what you need, already done, already vetted and tested, and one pip install away, third-party packages for everything that ails you. So I glued together a bunch of these third-party packages in one of my latest projects, really overcoming one of my inclinations to avoid anything that's not in the Python core libraries. So I'm doing scheduling stuff, and I wanted to use Sched, and I didn't, because the API I wanted was available under something called Schedule. So I had to do a pip install Schedule, and then that had to be started under the context of something that knew about Unix, Linux, and its ability to respawn tasks, to have a monitor checking every X number of seconds to see if a task is running. Such a small piece of overhead in today's incredibly powerful, fast processing computers that, one slice of, code running execution time every 5 seconds, and the payoff being anything you want to keep running 24/7 is going to be restarted. So that is just generally supported now under Linux, most distributions of Linux, it seems to me, under systemd, the replacement for an older system called, or known to many people as /etc/init.d/name of your program, space, start, stop, restart. And, as old school and appealing as that approach is, it's a little too old school for what I need today. I need something that will start in a context where I can hand all the concurrency and file locking and all the other explicit controls, exact versus period scheduling, two very different things, over to an API I love, because at the end of the day, you want to speak a language you're familiar and get ambiguity out of the picture. And if you still have bash scripts that you have to write and rely upon, and file locks you're creating without enough hooks into what's running to know how to close your file locks 100% of the time, it's not worth it. You're going to be building brittle systems that are going to suddenly not be running. So you choose this library and that to handle scheduling, to handling keeping things running in the respawning context, to handle logging, color-coded logging, to handle creating ASCII art out of just putting normal text in and the font you're asking for. So your debugging console can be really pretty as it scrolls by, fun to watch. My debug screens are fun to watch and give you a feel, a real pulse for what's going on in that application. So I'll run things that I will be scheduling on one of those console windows that I'll have respawning, so I'll always know it's going on. And then when I'm really satisfied with it, I just throw it over into the actual scheduled, the Python, like myschedule.py, that handles the concurrency and stuff, and I'll fit the job in kind of like a Tetris piece. And I'm going to be maxing out these this Amazon EC2 instance to a reasonable degree, leave a little room for reports to have some breathing room between each other for when things are suddenly much longer running than you expect. APIs become unreachable for a few hours, and so things can shuffle around a little even in that Tetris organization, and every job still runs successfully every day. And if they don't, I know and can take action on it and have a nice modular plug-in system so that everything runs as a Python imported module, so that you can run it individually as Python space file name or under the scheduler. So I can slice and dice it different ways. I could talk about this all day, by the way. I just got to wrap this up here. Suffice to say that I'm really pumped. It's strange to think that a nerd can get so pumped over these Python type components and gluing it all together with a text file and running it and having the same confidence as DevOps people that your stuff is still going to keep running, even with just one instance, without all that scalable network stuff going on. But you learn about scalable network stuff as you go, so you have to scale more than just, vertically by making your EC instance bigger, or horizontally by copying a copy of your totally self-contained island. You want to make sure that you have other scaling solutions in the future that can take more advantage of, cloud processing resources out there, maybe take more off of the work of the server and more onto when I say the server, I'm getting infrastructure as a service, IaaS, old school, spin your own stuff for the most part. You get into the system with a login, you deal with how things run under usually Linux. And then there's, all kinds of different spins on that. There's using automation deployment techniques like Ansible, so you never log into a server. You just copy instances of servers you set up, and it's all scriptable. There's Docker, so you've got a working server in a can. You just have to plug into the right hardware location in your system, and it runs as a working instance without any of the overhead or limitations of virtual machines. You have the full power of your hardware. It's a great way to optimize and get every last cycle of speed, squeeze every processing cycle out of your hardware, Docker. But there's so many contexts, so many different ways to do things, and me kind of stuck here in the middle, navigating my way through it. I'm gravitating more and more to lightweight Python-based middleware, the monkey in the middle, running on one or a couple of EC2 servers, keeping it easy to manage, not having to employ all those things DevOps people do to make, the next Google or Facebook scalable, super ultra Uber thing. I'm not doing that kind of stuff. I'm doing data master stuff. I need to work in batch file mode until it can be promoted to real time, until it can be put in a machine learning system. And everything I do is starting out that process, going, wouldn't it be nice to know these things before the data's even been collected, based on the trajectories of the data that's been collected so far, and make evaluations that to your competitors will look like complete mind reading and fortune telling? Why yes, it is of interest to go that route, and that's the route I'm going. And to do that, you don't need to be DevOps, and you don't need to be a JavaScript UI front-end guy, and you don't need to be a web developer necessarily, although knowing how to make your components work over HTTP communication is very useful, and you should be qualified to create microservices, web interfaces if you ever really needed to, deal with some GUI issues, and how to use Bootstrap.js and all the other tools out there to help you glue it together like you do on the back ends. But for the most part, master those back ends, make Vim and Python and to some degree Linux your samurai sword, and rely on those tool makers to keep those tools in really an excellent shape for you. You keep your own skills sharp, you keep on the latest versions of the software at a reasonable rate to get their benefits. We should all be moving gradually to Python 3.6 now, because the way those dictionaries are optimized, it helps everyone. And stay plugged into the community. Listen to Michael Kennedy, Brian Ocken, and all those happy people out there. And I would even throw partially derivative into the mix, because you don't want a Python-centric view of the world. Even though everyone's view of the world is gradually becoming Python-centric, you want to see the world through the eyes of other industries like data science, the highfalutin stuff where the data models are being worked out that will make quality and easy machine learning systems possible. So I'm really interested in that. I think there's one called Keros that lets you work at a more abstract level than TensorFlow. So I've been staying away from TensorFlow so far because I've built enough of this low-level stuff. I want to start churning through some interesting jobs with an awesome machine learning API. So that's out there. I'll be looking at that. But yeah, I got to get back up to the office and get this last thing connected, where I'm joining two things in the middle: my reliable scheduling and task responding tech with my do dashboards easily and lightweight and awesome tech. Well, thanks for joining me. Hope to talk to you again soon. And don't forget to subscribe.